Eternals assemble.
I saw him on TV with the cape shooting laser beams.
I don't wear a cape.
Are you a wizard, like Doctor Strange?
I'm super normal.
Welcome back, everyone. This will be my full Marvel Eternals movie breakdown, Easter eggs for the entire movie. There's so much stuff to talk about, so many WTF moments, and setting up so much big stuff for the future of the MCU. So if you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos. We're doing a giveaway for movie tickets and Disney Plus memberships. All you have to do to enter is just be a subscriber and leave your favorite Easter egg or reference or moment from the movie on the video. Careful for spoilers if you have not seen the movie yet, because we'll be talking about everything. I did just do a big post-credit scene and mid-credit scene video, so I'll link that at the end of this so you can watch that after this or down in the description below if you haven't seen it yet. But at the very beginning of the movie, they have the very first opening crawl that they've ever used in a Marvel movie, ever. And the funny thing is that most of this opening crawl is a lie. It lies about what the Eternals' real mission is. It reads like celestial propaganda. It's the dogma that the Eternals have been fed every time they get their memories reset. The opening crawl also tries to tell you that Arishem the Judge was created before the Infinity Stones were created. Like, he created the very first sun in the very first galaxy of the universe right after the Big Bang. But here's the thing, there's so many contradictory points here, and if you know real-world science, like if you paid attention in grade school science, then you know how the Big Bang works, you know how galaxies form around suns, you know how gravity works. So the whole idea in the movie is that Arishem the Judge is probably lying about almost everything. Now, he tells them some truths about what happened in their true history, but I think they're buried in lies, like half-truths buried in lies. So you're meant to question everything that you read in this opening crawl, like, wait a minute, this probably is not totally accurate. The crawl also lies about the true origin of the Deviants, the Eternals. It doesn't mention the Celestial World Forge, and it also lies presenting Arishem the Judge and the other Celestials like they're infallible gods whose gospel everyone should worship. Cut to later in the movie when Arishem full-on admits that he made a mistake when he created the Deviants and he lost control of them. Like, how powerful could he possibly be if he's this god who can't control the Deviants? It's all part of this scam that the Celestials are running as part of their grand design. It's sort of a wink at Thanos' grand design, like Thanos' plan to balance half of all life in the universe, and that would fix everything. There's also a sly reference to that when they talk about everything being in balance during the opening crawl. Perfectly balanced as all things should be. But the idea is that there's always a better way. So the whole idea is that the Celestials have this grand design, but there's probably a better way to accomplish what it is that they're trying to do. But because they're so powerful, no one has ever challenged that plan before. So if the Deviants can escape his judgment, then that means so can the Eternals. Like, even when Harry Styles' Eros, Starfox, shows up at the end of the movie, he's another prime Celestial like Ajax and like Cersei becomes during the movie. It's implied that he's not in the middle of any kind of mission to birth a new Celestial, so if he's gone off book and been able to escape Arishem's judgment, then that means other Eternals can do that as well. Like, your story isn't quite adding up here, and that's stuff that they'll get into during the sequels. It's them laying the seeds, to make another Celestial reference, of the Celestials' own downfall, ultimately at the hands of the other Eternals and potentially other powerful beings. Clearly, from the side of nowhere in Guardians of the Galaxy, Celestials can be killed with sufficient power. Also, they wind up killing Tiamat at the end of the movie using the Unimind. I mean, they turn him to stone, but effectively he's dead. Celestials are supposed to be the most powerful cosmic beings that we've met so far in the MCU. They were not affected by Thanos' snap, one, because they're not technically alive, and Thanos was only snapping life. The whole key, though, is in the Unimind. At the end of the movie, Cersei becomes this focal point of their Unimind, the receptacle for all their combined cosmic energy, and they reveal that she also gains an extra power-up when the Unimind connects them to Tiamat's power. So the Unimind kind of leeches off of his cosmic energy, giving them the power boost that she needs to transform him into stone. So they were able to do that to kill that Celestial with just a handful of Eternals. Then if they can find other Eternals in other parts of the universe and form a larger Unimind, then they can kill more Celestials. But if you take it at face value, what Arishem tells to Cersei is that over billions of years, what's happened is that he's the prime Celestial, the one that was created first. He created the first sun that led to the creation of the first galaxy in the universe. Then as his cycle of birthing other Celestials continued and more Celestials rose up and they created more and more galaxies, more and more suns, he planted thousands of celestial seeds all over the universe in different galaxies. And he explains that this cycle is necessary in order to help the universe continue existing, like it would fall to its heat death faster if they didn't continue to create more Celestials that created more suns, creating more galaxies. Connecting this now to the Loki series and He Who Remains, Kang, we saw the end of the main MCU universe timeline, the sacred timeline, and there were no more Celestials here. He Who Remains is called that because he literally is the last remaining living being in the universe at this point in the timeline. So that confirms that at some point in the timeline, Arishem the Judge and the other Celestials have to die. The movie jumps all over the timeline. You see the origin of the universe according to Arishem, if you believe him at face value. Like I said, I think that he's lying a little bit. He's being kind of misleading about the true origin of the universe and the way he was created. Early on during his cycles of birthing new Celestials, he created the Deviants, as he says he lost control of them, then created the Eternals to correct that mistake. And each time they birth a new Celestial, they'll just wipe the memories of the Eternals on that planet and send them to another planet to do the same thing again over millions and millions of years. So the Eternals' main characters in the movie aren't even the original Eternals. That's a big Jack Kirby Eternals comic book reference. In the comics, Ajax, Icarus, Circe, Athena, all the main characters are the children of other older Eternals. But in the comics, they're not robots, they're just highly evolved humans who were modified by the Celestials. Making another Thanos connection, Thanos' parents came from Earth originally, so Thanos has a connection to Earth in a way MCU Thanos does not. Also, Thanos and Athena are cousins in the comics. I know there are a lot of questions about how Thanos and Harry Styles' Eros can both be the children of Eternals if Eternals technically are robots that can't have children. Don't worry, I'll explain that later in the video. But the place they land their ship, the Domo, is in Mesopotamia, about 7,000 years ago, because that's believed to be the cradle of civilization on Earth as civilization had just started to form. So that's where the Deviants start attacking, because at this point in history, it's the biggest population center. The whole idea being that the Celestials' actual plan, the grand design, is to have the Eternals help humans increase their populations as fast as possible on all these different worlds. Because the celestial seed of Tiamat inside the Earth needs to feed off this low-level cosmic energy given off by life forms. They don't have to be humans because they do this all over the universe on other planets where there are alien species that aren't quite as humanoid. But in order to fully mature a new Celestial, a certain amount of population is required. Ajax claims that had Thanos not snapped half the population originally, the emergence would have happened about a week after Avengers Infinity War, so they were still going to have a downer ending after that movie no matter what, RIP. Although connecting this back to the Loki series, He Who Remains, Kang, came from Earth in the distant future, so had it come to that, He Who Remains probably would have intervened, altering the course of history so that he could be born, like he wouldn't be erased from existence if the Earth was destroyed. But all that means is that it takes between 7 and 8 billion people to fully hatch a new Celestial. Another connection to Ego the Living Planet because he is a Celestial as well. This whole plan of seeding other planets with Celestial seeds is kind of what Ego the Living Planet was doing with his seeds on other worlds. Although his mission was kind of a twisted version of what Arishem the Judge was doing. That's also another chink in the Celestial armor. Like if the Celestials are so powerful they have this ultimate grand design, then how do you explain rogue Celestials like Ego the Living Planet? That's why you're meant to question everything that Arishem the Judge says during the movie. Like, this is not the whole truth. I feel like you're lying to me about everything now. They start the movie with a roster of 10 Eternals, and they explain that it's always been this team going to each different planet together. They've been hurt, they've been killed in previous missions, but they're always repaired, they always have their memories wiped after each mission, except for Ajax. At the end of the movie, when they sort of merge their energy with Tiamat's energy, they also claim that they've done this before too, and that's how, in most cases, they've survived each emergence. But the main roster in this movie is the basic main roster of Jack Kirby's original Eternals comic book, but they changed some of the relationships and some of the betrayals. In the movie, it's Icarus who turns on the team. In the comics, that's usually Druig. All the Eternals are so powerful that all the people of Earth worship them as gods. They inspire many of the modern-day myths about ancient gods, like Sprite is the one who created the Greek legend of Icarus, who flew too close to the sun. They also reference that again a couple times in the movie, like he attacks from the sun, line of sight, in the opening battle, and at the end of the movie, he literally flies into the sun to kill himself as a way to atone for what he's done. But because at the end of the movie, Arishem the Judge takes them back to the World Forge where he created them in the first place, it would be super easy for him to 3D print a new copy of Icarus, and because he explains that he keeps all their memories that he downloads in storage there, they can always just upload those memories to a new Icarus body, so they could bring Richard Madden back in a future movie if they want to. A lot of you've also asked why the Eternals all look so different, why do they have different accents, why are some of them out of shape, why is Makkari deaf if they're all meant to be these perfect OP super powerful beings? Mostly the idea is that Arishem the Judge created them to blend in with the populations of each planet that they go to. There's a more complicated explanation for why Makkari is deaf in the comics, but because the way they explain Thena's memory problems are the result of some glitches during their reboot cycle process, I think you could also blame Makkari being deaf on something like that. They cannot have children as they exist in this form, at least early in the movie, so Phastos' son here is probably adopted. But now you ask about Thanos and his brother, Eros. How can they be the children of two Eternals from Titan if Eternals can't have children? I think the answer is in Sprite's ending. So Cersei uses the power of the Unimind she has left over to change Sprite into a more human form. If it wasn't clear, Sprite still has all of her powers, it's just that she ages like a human, she has all their weaknesses now, like she could get a common cold. Something similar probably happened to Thanos' parents. They were changed in a way that allowed them to conceive, but fundamentally, Thanos and his brother, Eros, Harry Styles, are both Eternals. The reason why Thanos is a purple space grimace with a nutsack chin is because in the comics he was born with a deviant mutation, but he's still an Eternal. As they bring Harry Styles back in future movies as the Eros Starfox character, more characters will probably ask him questions about Thanos and his relationship. And Marvel will probably just use that as an opportunity to answer a lot of those details and questions people have about Thanos' backstory. After their big opening battle with the Deviants, Cersei changes the dagger, gives it to the early human, and then they reference it again after the big time jump to present day when she's in London and sees it on the billboard as part of this museum exhibit. The title and the weapon itself, Artifacts That Shape Human History, is a reference to the way they shaped the course of human evolution by giving them technology over the years, like Phastos was involved in the creation of the atomic bomb. They also have a big argument about this later when they realize the truth of their mission, that they've been helping propagate war because war leads to other advancements in technology that helps the population grow even faster. Cersei speaks to the statue of Charles Darwin when she's rushing in, calling him Charlie because she knew him when he was alive. The funny thing about the museum here, the paintings, all the statues, the exhibits, all these famous people from history, she would have known them when they were alive, like she would have been their senpai at some point. Later when they're celebrating and Cersei gives Dane Whitman his family's ring from the Middle Ages, it has the crest of the Black Knight on it, the same crest that's on the case of the Ebony blade in the post-credit scene. It's implied that she lied about getting it on eBay, like she actually probably got it from Camelot in the original Black Knight Sir Percy, Dane Whitman's ancestor, because they said all the Eternals lived in Camelot with King Arthur and his court before its fall. Makkari even straight up yoinked Excalibur and has it on their ship. There's this big running joke about Makkari just having sticky fingers through the film, just stealing all kinds of treasures and artifacts as they go along through history, so their ship, the Domo, is just full of all kinds of treasure. But the original Black Knight comes from Camelot. The Ebony blade itself was forged by Merlin. So for example, Merlin, another Doctor Strange connection, because Kit Harington's Dane Whitman name drops Doctor Strange, Merlin was probably the Sorcerer Supreme of the Middle Ages. When she rushes into the classroom too, Dane Whitman is giving that lecture about the seeds of perfection. That's a reference to the celestial seeds around the universe that Arishem the Judge sent out. Also a reference to the celestial orb inside Cersei, the seed of perfection that helps her become super OP through the Unimind, changing Tiamat into stone. That also connects to Cersei's lecture about apex predators because that in itself is also a reference to the Celestials. They are meant to be the apex predators of the MCU currently. The reason Dane Whitman is referencing Doctor Strange, though, so casually is because at this point after the events of Avengers Endgame, it's about 8 months or so after Avengers Endgame, this is happening around the same time Spider-Man Far From Home is happening. At this point in history, after Avengers Endgame and the blip, all the Avengers have become pop culture heroes. Everybody around the planet knows about Thanos, the Infinity Gauntlet, and the Avengers time heist mission. When the new Deviant attacks them, they explain that it's evolved because it fed on Ajax cosmic energy thanks to Crow. Crow fed on Ajax energy, then Crow sort of fed the other Deviants, further evolving them. The major difference between Deviants and Eternals in the movie is that Deviants were created as fully organic life forms capable of evolving based on the things that they kill and consume. Arishem claims that this is the reason why he can't control them anymore, because they continue to evolve and become more and more powerful. That's why he said he wanted to create the Eternals to be cosmic robots incapable of evolving. Although Cersei proves that to be false when she's able to change Sprite into a human later in the movie. They make all kinds of Superman references when Icarus comes in and saves them from the Deviant. There's no rule about them referencing Batman and Superman in Marvel movies or DC stuff, because later they also do reference Batman when he's talking about Karun and Kingo's relationship, like you are his Alfred to Kingo's Batman. They reference Marvel movies inside DC TV shows all the time, so this happens both ways, both in DC movies and in Marvel movies. The director also said their depiction of Icarus in the movie was based on Zack Snyder's Man of Steel movie. Like they created this version of Icarus in the movie in the MCU to be kind of like their version of Superman. They have a bit of a Game of Thrones reference when Dane Whitman meets Icarus for the first time because Kit Harington and Richard Madden played Jon Snow and Robb Stark. The last time that they saw each other in Game of Thrones, he said, "Next time I see you, you'll be dressed in black." And now he's playing the Black Knight, so technically he wasn't wrong. Also in the movie, they have a love triangle with a character named Cersei, even though it's spelled differently from Game of Thrones Cersei. The other big Game of Thrones reference is actually through the soundtrack. So Ramin Djawadi did the soundtrack for the Eternals, the music. He also did the music for Game of Thrones. They explain the real reason why Icarus left Cersei so many hundreds of years ago is because he learned the truth about their mission and the emergence from Ajax after they all went their separate ways during the big Spanish assault on the Aztecs, and it just broke him inside. He couldn't deal with it, and he isolated himself from all the other Eternals. Cersei then explains everything to Dane Whitman about their backstory, why they didn't help fight Thanos during Avengers Endgame or during any of the other wars, because Arishem the Judge ordered them not to unless deviants started killing off humans. Because again, it's all about just increasing the population as fast as possible. Then they start intercutting flashbacks with the present-day road trip as they go around uniting the rest of the team. The next one being to ancient Babylon. They also explained that they hid their ship, the Domo, inside the very foundation of Babylon, like their ship is part of the city itself, just hidden by the buildings. And later it's implied that they never bothered to move it. The ship was just slowly buried underneath all the changing landscape over many hundreds of years. Like when they go back to enter it in present day, it's been in the same place that Babylon was this whole time. When Ajax contacts Arishem that first time in the movie and says the other Eternals across the universe will learn from their success, he's talking about their ability to grow the population on Earth faster. Like, hey, we found some tricks to boost the population even quicker, meaning each new Celestial could be born even faster. It's all about that cosmic supply chain. Gotta get those Celestials off the line faster and faster. They find Ajax's dead body, but later, with all the time jumps, we find out that it was Icarus who killed her to prevent her from stopping the emergence because he's so committed to Arishem in the Celestials' dogma that he'll do anything to see their plan succeed. They try to play it during the movie like he's really torn up about it, like he cares about all of his fellow teammates, like he's still in love with Cersei. He didn't stop loving her, but he won't defy Arishem the Judge and the other Celestials. When they go to get Gilgamesh and Thena, they explain more about her memory problems. We eventually learned that it was all part of this previous memory extraction reboot cycle. There was some glitch during that, and she's just starting to remember all the previous worlds that they've been on. Centauri 6 was the planet that they were on right before they came to Earth, like the last mission they went on. They say there are a couple ways to fix her memory, like they could either wipe her completely, which she says that she doesn't want to do because she wants to remember everything, but because Arishem takes them back to the World Forge, they could wipe her memory there, like reset her, then re-upload all the old memories that Arishem stores there into that body, like using Windows Restore with a backup hard drive. When Druig takes the Aztecs and walks off into the jungle to form his little community, this is also a reference to the disappearance of the Aztec culture. But in the MCU, Druig says he's been using his power to protect these people for hundreds of years, so they're the ancestors of the original Aztecs from this city here, and he's just been keeping anyone from the outside world from interfering with their community from this whole time, sort of like a hardcore version of what Wakanda has been doing. In present day, when they go to get Kingo, he's in the middle of making a Bollywood movie based on their adventures as the Eternals team. So he's making an Eternals movie inside the Eternals movie, calling it The Legend of Icarus, playing Icarus himself. Later, he also tries to make a separate documentary Eternals movie within the Eternals movie so that the world will just eventually know the truth about them, joking that they'll finally know the truth about the Shadow Warrior. And the funny thing about all of Kingo's Bollywood movies that he's been making recently, this franchise that he's been making, the Shadow Warrior sequels, is that they're meant to be Bollywood versions of all the Marvel movies, so it's a bit of a funny meta Easter egg for the Infinity Saga movies. Like when Karun references the line from the Shadow Warrior 2 Voyage of Time, that's a reference to Avengers Endgame. The quote about protecting your family, Avengers Endgame was all about bringing everyone's families back. They also kind of foreshadow the Blade cameo scene in the post-credit scene with Mahershala Ali when Kingo says Karun tried to stake him in the heart thinking that he was a vampire. Vampires have been referenced a couple times in different MCU movies at this point. He also says that he's been pretending to be his own children throughout history, creating the greatest Bollywood dynasty in history. And just like Makari collects treasure and artifacts from their adventures across history, Kingo also seems like he owns the original Captain America shield from his USO tour before he got his vibranium shield. When he's making that documentary, he references most of the other Avengers like Spider-Man, Iron Man, Captain America. He also says that Thor used to follow him around when Thor was a little kid, because Thor's only about 1,500 years old and Kingo is millions of years old. Maybe they can have a reference to that in the next Avengers movie when they cross over, like Thor be like, "Oh, you're that guy, yeah, I remember you." There is a deleted scene that didn't make the final cut of the movie from all the trailers where Icarus says, "Eternals assemble like Avengers assemble." There are many different Avengers references throughout the film. Like when they're talking about the events of Avengers Endgame and the new Avengers team, saying that now that Captain America and Iron Man are gone, who's going to lead the new team? Who's going to be on that team? It's Marvel setting up the Eternals crossing over with the Avengers in Avengers 5. But not all of them will be in Avengers 5. Like half of them died during this movie, and only a couple of them will probably show up at any one time. Like Kit Harington's Black Knight will come back, Cersei will probably be in that next Avengers movie, maybe a couple others will get cameo scenes. But Gilgamesh has been living with Thena, taking care of her because of her memory problems. It's implied that they had a relationship at some point in history because he loved her. Then when Cersei learns about the emergence and Tiamat from Arishem, Tiamat's story is basically right out of the Neil Gaiman Eternals run. During that, they called him the Dreaming Celestial. In this movie, they try to find a way to get him to go back to sleep. Cersei accomplishes that with a similar trick as they used in the comic book. Once Crow shows up and kills Gilgamesh, they explain that as he consumes their cosmic energy, he also gains all their memories, and his story was a little muddled during the film. If you couldn't tell, that's Bill Skarsgård playing the character or doing the voice. He is the son, in real life, of Stellan Skarsgård, who plays Eric Selvig in the MCU, so keeping it in the family. But his whole thing is that he doesn't care about the Earth, doesn't care about humans, he just wants revenge against the Celestials. But if there was any question about that, yes, he is dead at the end of the movie. He couldn't heal that wound. Then they go to get Phastos, who's living with his family. I've already explained the Superman reference that they make here, but they also reference Vibranium, Wakanda, the Black Panther movie. Celestials can use Vibranium to form their bodies, so I think it's implied that had the emergence actually happened, Tiamat could have wound up using the Vibranium mound to strengthen himself. There's also a big Star Wars Easter egg here too. They reference Star Wars many times during most of the recent Marvel movies. Then when they finally go back to the ship, they see all the treasure that Makkari has been collecting over the years. I've already explained the Excalibur and the Ebony Blade reference for King Arthur and Camelot. They explained that she's been living on the ship this whole time since they all split. Then a lot of you asked about Phastos' bracelets that he creates. So he creates one version, then Icarus breaks those, then he uses Cersei's orb to create them again. A lot of you've asked if the bracelets are connected to the 10 Rings of Power from the Shang-Chi movie. There's always possible that there's a connection through the Celestials, the Eternals, but the 10 rings don't look anything like the bracelets that Phastos creates, and they function completely differently, and the type of energy that they channel looks completely different from the energy that Shang-Chi gives off when he's wielding the 10 rings. So right now, I think that the 10 rings are supposed to be something that's totally different. The Unimind that he talks about is a Jack Kirby thing from the original Eternals comics. They all have the ability to form their minds into a single consciousness, becoming super powerful together as a group. The more minds that combine into the Unimind, the more powerful it becomes. So that's the whole idea, I think, with future Eternal sequels. Them finding other Eternals to help them, forming a larger Unimind, giving them the power they need to defeat Arishem the Judge and some of the other Celestials. The place where Tiamat emerges from and where they turn him to stone, where he resides now, seems like it's somewhere in the Atlantic near Brazil, because she passed through Rio de Janeiro right before arriving at Tiamat's location. A lot of you have asked about this too, like there's a giant stone celestial in the earth now. Will they reference that in future movies? I think of course they're going to reference that in some future movies. I've also heard some reports that the consequences of what happens here with the ocean and Tiamat will affect what's happening with Atlantis and Namor storyline during Black Panther 2. After the big WTF Icarus betrayal, they have their big final fight. Icarus destroys their ship like it's no big deal. Phastos says he repaired it so that the other Eternals could use it to go on their mission to find the other Eternals around the universe. There are a couple Easter eggs during this big final boss fight. When Icarus breaks free of Phastos' chains, the shot of him blasting his eye-beams straight up at the sky is a reference to this comic book cover. And I've already explained how they're able to use Tiamat's energy to fully change him into stone, how Cersei uses what's left of the extra power to change Sprite into a human. And like I said, Icarus does die when he flies into the sun, paying off the Greek legend of Icarus flying too close to the sun. Then at the end of the film, they wind up sending Sprite to go live with Kingo, but they're making her go back to school just to blend in. Like she already knows everything she needs to know. Like she doesn't need to relearn math and history again. Kingo goes back to making his Eternals movie inside the Eternals movie, The Legend of Icarus. And Dane Whitman tries to tell Cersei about the truth of his family, the Black Knight, the Ebony Blade, until Arishem the Judge rolls up to take the other Eternals back to the Celestial World Forge to determine whether or not the Earth is worthy to continue existing, just based on their memories. But Arishem explains that he's willing to give the Earth the benefit of the doubt, but if he determines from their memories that humans suck balls, then the Celestial host will come back to judge the planet and destroy it. That's basically what's happening during this Guardians of the Galaxy Eson the Searcher scene. Then the mid-credit scene picks up after a few weeks have gone by, so small time jump. Druig, Thena, and Makari complain that they haven't found any signs of other Eternals around the universe yet, and they haven't heard back from the team members who stayed on Earth. Now we know why, but they don't find out what happened till Pip the Troll and Eros show up. They both teleport in using technology similar to the Bifrost. That's why it has the same rainbow effect as the Bifrost in the Thor movies. I did a whole separate video for this scene and the Black Knight post-credit scene, so I'll link that at the end of this and down below in the description. But the idea is that Patton Oswalt is Pip the Troll from the Infinity Gauntlet Thanos storyline, and Harry Styles is Eros or Starfox, whatever you want to call him, inside the MCU now. He confirms that he's Thanos' younger brother, Prince of Titan, Knave of Hearts. That's just a reference to his powers in the comics, powers to make people horny on main. He's another Prime Eternal, just like Ajax, just like Cersei, and says he's going to use his orb to help them rescue their friends from the Celestial World Forge and Arishem the Judge. That's also a plot that they'll cover in the sequel movies. But Harry Styles' Eros might cameo in other space-based Marvel movies like Guardians of the Galaxy 3 or Captain Marvel 2 or a Nova movie, any theoretical space-based Marvel movie. There's way more Easter eggs and references going on during this mid-credit scene, so just watch my other video about it to learn about all of them. During the post-credit scene, they reveal the real MCU Ebony Blade. Kit Harington's Dane Whitman is getting ready to take up the mantle of the Black Knight from his uncle. This room where he is, where the Ebony Blade is inside his uncle's castle. In the comics, his uncle was the evil version of the Black Knight, an Avengers villain. When he lay dying, he leaves everything he owns to Dane Whitman, and when he's taking stock of everything inside the castle, he finds a secret room that contains the Ebony Blade, picks it up, becoming the next Black Knight in their family. On the case, there's a phrase in Latin that reads, Mors mihi lucrum, death is my reward. That's a reference to the curse of the Ebony Blade, the curse of their family. Kit Harington referred to it as an addiction to the blade. The blade gives the wielder these crazy powers, but it also comes with a bloodlust. Eventually, you wind up being consumed with so much berserker rage, you just turn on everyone. It's implied that that's what happened to his uncle and why he had such a strained relationship with him in the movie. Earlier in the movie, Cersei had said, "You always wanted to make up with your uncle. Now's the time to do that." The blade is whispering to him as he prepares to touch it. The voices are all the souls that it's collected. It basically reaps the souls of everyone that's killed by the blade. The surface of the blade has fluidic properties. It's alive, kind of like the Necro Sword. And just before he touches it, off screen, you hear Mahershala Ali, MCU Blade, say, "Are you sure you're ready for that, Dane Whitman?" And the reason why they probably wanted to put Blade in this Black Knight post-credit scene is to help set up the MCU Blade movie and imply that Kit Harington's Black Knight will show up in that Blade movie. Like Black Knight Vampire Hunter, Kit Harington using the Ebony Blade to fight vampires with Blade. Kevin Feige has also revealed that Kit Harington will show up in that next Avengers 5 movie eventually, but it sounds like the Blade movie is the next place we'll see him. There's also a whole lot more going on in this post-credit scene that I cover in that separate post-credit scene video. I talk about the powers and abilities that you get from the blade. So like I said, there's a link for that video at the end of this and down in the description. But if you did spot any huge Easter eggs that I didn't cover in this video or in my last video, just write them below in the description. I will do separate deep dive videos on Starfox and the Black Knight later this weekend, so make sure you have alerts enabled for my channel so you don't miss those. There's still a lot of big stuff to talk about, so just leave all your requests in the comments below. Congratulations, Savitar, God of Speed. You're the giveaway winner from my last big video. Please email me on the About page of my channel so I can get your contact details. Everyone click here for that full Eternals post-credit scene and mid-credit scene video, and click here to learn how Thanos saved the Avengers from the Celestials. Thank you so much for watching, everyone stay safe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.